Good morning and welcome to Artifact Live, where we look at the art and science of storytelling. My name is Scott McArthur. Thank you very much for tuning in once again. Week 27. It's almost beyond my comprehension now. It's getting ridiculous. I'm thinking about what I can do to celebrate week 30. I've got a plan, but I won't tell you what that is about at the moment. So just before we dive into this, there's a couple of things I wanted to mention in terms of housekeeping. If you're watching on my Facebook group, it's called The Empathy Engine. I'll just put that up here. If you want your name to appear in the chat, you'll have to just click a little link. Now, it's in the Empathy Engine in the actual Facebook group, but here it is on the screen. And what that'll allow you to do, it's 3 clicks. Click, 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 and it'll enable your name to be visible if you comment on the chat. So that would be great if you could do that. Otherwise, it's been an interesting week. I've been back on the boards, virtual boards, speaking properly at a conference. And we had International Women's Week, the return last week, which was amazing. 6 hours of live storytelling. I have never done anything like that before. It was exhausting, but it did prove to myself that you can do this using this simple technology on your own to run a summit. It is absolutely amazing, and well done, Restream. I know we've had our ups and downs, folks, but Restream, it worked brilliantly. So thanks very much. Now, this week, I'm absolutely delighted to have my friend and very clever vet, Paul Ramos, back with us. Now, Paul joined us just a few weeks ago where we talked about science and storytelling for the first time, and you heard about some of his adventures. But this week, we're going to take it in a slightly different direction. But let me get Paul on just to make sure we're working today. Hi, Paul.
Hey, Scott. How's it going?
How you doing? Good to see you. Good to see you.
I'm at home.
Yay! Not for long, but we'll come back to that. Our eagle-eyed viewers might have noticed, or may have noticed, I'm not sure in English, that we changed the title of this. Initially, we were just calling it a sort of rather generic science and storytelling. But we changed it, didn't we, Paul? We had a little pre-production discussion. We actually have discussions before the event, believe it or not, everybody. And we decided that the word science might need a bit of tweaking. So what was that conversation about, Paul? Where did we get that from?
I was just out in the yard talking, and you were like, okay, well, what do you want to talk about today? And so you said, science and communication will be like kind of like the headliner. And I just thought, like even for me, science kind of raises the cortisol levels a little bit, because science is a subject that you have to get through in high school and in university and get over. And it's only really for those few, right? It's kind of like, it's quite an exclusive term that, even by using the language of science, straight away, 70% of people might just tune out. So I thought, can we come up with a different name for science? Like, what is science?
Yeah.
So it's just not sort of blacklisted by most of the world, because it's a stressful subject.
Yes. So what do we think science is? Can we come up with a definition between us then? Come on.
Okay. All right. So what is science? Really, I guess when you talk about science, you're just trying to understand the truths of the natural world, right? Like, pretty much. So maybe you talk about the natural world, but that comes with all sorts of, anchors as well. It's almost like the real world, like how the world really is science. And we try to figure that out. How is the world really? And that's science. And we in the world being our home, this planet that we all share, we all live in. So I was trying to think of, not a euphemism, but I'm sure there's a lot of different examples of something that most people don't like to talk about simply term, and then you just rebrand it, rename it, and then it's all of a sudden kind of like I talk about. Maybe we need to do that with science.
I think that it was interesting when we had the conversation, because I've quite often, Paul, people see science as the opposite for some reason. It's not the natural world. I mean, you hear people talking about, well, that's not natural, but science is about the natural, isn't it? I mean, that's the, people say, well, is that a natural product? And you go, well, what does that actually mean? I think I think you've raised a really important point there, that it is about the natural world. It is about reality, I guess. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, and you're right
Yeah.
though. Like the word science and natural and nature don't
Yeah.
like they don't gel because we put science in a box where it's all about textbooks, stories, and research reports and numbers. And that's all true. But the big picture, it's actually about nature. So
Yes.
I completely understand why someone would feel that way. We need to
Yes.
rebrand
I
science.
was
There, Scott.
I was talking last week with senior lecturer from University of London, Ashok, who is a specialist in neuropsychology, and he said that one of his ambitions is actually to make that transition between the stuffy, quite old-fashioned perspective of what science is, and towards a more useful, if you like, or understandable definition of science. And I think that's it's a shame that we're still talking about it, because people have been trying to do this
Less
for
exclusive,
decades.
less
Yeah,
exclusive. Yeah.
that's good, and maybe more inclusive as well. I mean, maybe that's the word that's been missing, because we talk a lot just now about diversity and inclusion, and the forgive me for going off on a slight tangent, but diversity is about being invited to the dance. Inclusion is about being asked to dance. And I think that inclusion word in the scientific paradigm is not often used. I mean, we have some, I know we're going to talk about zoos later on, but we have some zoos that are trying to do that, to get particularly children involved and, being included in their efforts. But yeah, could be quite an interesting subject to riff off a bit more. I think we'll have fun with that. But
Maybe hopefully we make some waves and get some people talking.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about waves, because you're about to set off, aren't you, on an adventure, another adventure? Tell us about that.
I am. I'm going to the Maldives. So I'm going to work with the Olive Ridley project in the Maldives. I think the Maldives has 2 veterinarians in the country, so I'm going to be increasing the number of vets by 33% or something like that. Right? Is that are the maths right there? Basically, mainly, I have a number of goals, but really what I want to get out at the end of it, I'll be there for the month of April mainly, is when I get out of it, personally, I want to get out of it being a sea turtle vet. That's what I really want. But there's so much more that I also want to do as well. Yeah. One big thing is, after all these years of studying and working, I've really lost that magic within me. I've lost the passion. I've lost the interest, and I need to touch on that again. I need to find out what made me happy as a kid, turning over leaves and rocks and being out in the woods for hours by myself. Like that, Paul is still inside of me, and I need to find him again. And so sometimes, like, I know I have a family, but if I want to be the best dad and the best husband, best version of myself, I have to take care of that part. I have to take care of myself. So that's another reason I'm going. And there are many other reasons also.
I noticed on your website, and I've already put the site on the chat here, your tagline is interesting. I've because in connection there lies hope. That's kind of linked to what you just said, isn't it? Connection with yourself to improve connection with others. That's quite a neat. So do you think connection is one of the issues that we're experiencing difficulties with during the COVID pandemic?
I think probably connection has been probably the biggest issue that's come to the surface, meaning that, yes, we have these connections with ourselves as well. And what's really been lacking with that, to be honest, there's been a pandemic, if you will, of dishonesty with ourselves, where facts and truth and reason and logic, none of that matters at all. It's no longer a value, right? So there's a disconnect with that. But like there's been we are all so profoundly connected to nature. It's always been that way. But only now are we kind of starting to acknowledge that. And I think that's one good thing coming out of this. So it's more like, because in the acknowledgement of the connection, there's hope, because with acknowledgement will come action. But you have to acknowledge first.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that has worried me a fair bit is, and it's something that I don't want to get too geeky on this about science, but one of the things about how we react in these circumstances is, although we maybe feel okay, our body still reacts. The automatic part of the body still reacts to the change. And I was listening to someone talk about the psychology of trauma the other day, and she's based over in the States, and she said we have a gap in our experience, which is the touching, the sort of the touching other people. So although we think that doing things like this, and I mean, I love doing this, this is great, but we do miss the hugs, we do miss the handshakes, we do. And I think that part of connection is actually, I think there's some, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I think there are some, particularly corporations, trying to pretend that we don't need that touch. We can do it all digitally. Well, quite frankly, that's bullshit. There's a very scientific term for you today, bullshit. But it's bullshit, because although you can do some of it like this, and I think this works for us, I think it's really good. But I think that lack of intimacy is something that I think a lot of people have underestimated. And there is and I think the word is overused, but the word trauma, I'm actually interviewing someone this afternoon about this, about trauma, to see what she thinks about it. But I think there is going to be a long-term pandemic of trauma-related reactions to this pandemic that most of us aren't even aware of. Pod, if that's something that you've thought about.
I've been thinking about a lot of sort of the a lot of us have been hit with the negative consequences, myself included. I've lost a loved one, but also I try to think about the positive things, and I think there will be a lot of. I don't even like to use the word tremendous anymore. It makes me want to throw up in my mouth.
Yeah.
That's like that. You can't use that word anymore. It's like Adolf. You can't use that word anymore for a child. With me, positive, in a positive aspect, I think at least now people can do better. This format is a good, sometimes substitute, and definitely add on to your real world connections. Because in real life, you could only be in a room maybe once or twice a year with a lot of people, but this way you can actually maintain that connection on a better level than if you were writing emails or talking over the phone. And I think VR will add to that further down the line as well. So I think there's a lot of positive things. But yes, I mean, I also, it's not only, Scott, just about touch, but there's also a lot of things that we aren't aware of ourselves. Like we smell, we can detect really subtle changes of body language, and you can't get that on video.
No. So can I took us off down a little track there, but I hope everybody appreciated why it made sense to do it. But back to your turtle exciting adventure that's coming. What are you going to be doing? Is it veterinary work, or is it?
Yes, that works. So there's a number. There's 7 types of sea turtles in the world. 6 of which are endangered by the IUCN standards, and some are all are endangered in some parts of the world. That makes sense. So olive ridleys in particular are harder hit by what are called ghost nets. And ghost nets are basically drift nets and discarded fishing debris. Sometimes that's intentional, sometimes it's by accident, sometimes it's by storms. And these nets sort of, they go to the surface and then they go down to the bottom and they come back up, and they sort of, this cycle's created. And because olive ridleys are pelagic species out in the blue, they get entangled in these. And so they get entangled even in waters that are not from your own country. This doesn't occur in the Maldives, this problem. It occurs elsewhere, but they show up on the shores of the Maldives. So we'll be taking care of a lot of olive ridley turtles impacted by ghost nets, and that's something that is kind of a hand in hand with the whole plastics in the ocean as well.
There was actually, I don't know if you saw it, there's and I know you've got experience of this, there's a TikTok video just gone viral today of someone saving a turtle from one of those ghost nets. I don't know if you've seen it yet.
No,
yeah, just literally this morning when I had to go to the tip today, and I was watching TikTok while I was waiting to get in, and here comes a turtle thing. Oh, I actually thought it might have been you, to be honest. When I saw it, I thought, oh, what was up to it again? But yeah, it's gone today.
I've been kind of like logging sort of storylines of what I want to do when I'm there as well. Like you could have like turtle school 10 episodes, and of the different sort of parts of what happens and our part in it. So I'm excited about storytelling over there as well.
Marvelous. Well, I can't wait to watch. Are you going to be broadcasting?
So I've been studying this book.
I can see it. There's a good artifact.
There's only one sea turtle book in the world. Like, this is it. That's the only one. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
That's not a huge demand.
I had quite an interesting experience with sea turtles. I've not told you this. It was about 2 years ago. Samantha and I did a house swap. We went to Hawaii, and there's lots of sea turtles there. And they famously, we were there just purely by coincidence. We were there at the time of year when they were coming on shore to lay their eggs. And on our very final day, we were in the north of one of the smaller islands, not the big island, but we were on one of the smaller islands. And we were walking on this jetty out into the water. And this enormous, I mean, massive, huge.
It'll be a green turtle. Yeah.
Was swimming along. It was always a coincidence, but it was swimming along beside us. Maybe it wasn't a coincidence. It seemed to be curious. Anyway, we walked out for about maybe 15 minutes. It was quite a long jetty, and we were watching it just swimming around, and it was getting dark, and we came back off the jetty, Paul, onto the beach, and the boys had been playing, our two boys had been playing on the beach, and just as we were leaving, the moon was out, and there was a quite bright moonshine, and just as we were leaving, this bloody turtle came out of the water. Its head came out of the water. And for all, you'd swear it was making sure we were leaving. You know, it was like, on you go. Thanks for coming, but please leave. It was a weird.
Hawaii is amazing in that sense. Like there's a lot of marine life. There are a lot of turtles, a lot of whales during certain times of the year. It's incredible when you go there.
Oh,
it's
beautiful experience, and it was so nice for the boys to. I mean, we were sitting on a beach at one point. We were the only people on the beach, and there were about, I don't know, I've got video of it, maybe 10 turtles coming out of the water. And the boys were like, oh, you can imagine, you know, I was extraordinary. So I am extremely jealous, but I do hope that we can follow you. Are you going to be on TikTok, or are you going to be, how are you going to be keeping in touch with it?
I'm not sure. I don't know what the connection is, or I'm not sure.
Yeah. You don't want to be spending your time on technology when you're exploring such a beautiful natural thing, I guess. But
I mean, I'm sure I can take the content, because some of it's really important to share, because it's like, you know, we're part of it. We're part of what's happening. Yes, you know, we are driving the fisheries, which in turn are driving the ghost nets, and you know, it's all connected.
It's all connected.
Yeah.
So I do love your little catchphrase on your website. It's fantastic. I'll put it back up. But so one of the reasons we wanted to come back together, obviously we could do this show every week, I suspect, you and I. You know, we could talk every week and still have more to talk about. But you said to me after the last show that you would like to come back to talk about, you know, something a bit more tangible, perhaps, a bit more practical for my viewers that they could take away with them. So that's what we're going to do for the next maybe 15 minutes. We'll just have a chat about some practical things. And
I brought that up because I was thinking when I'm doing my laundry or vacuuming the house, like vacuuming the house is not a problem anymore because of podcasts, but I really like to learn things. And so I think, it'd be cool if we could, you know, even if there's one thing that someone can take away that might be useful, that'd be cool.
Yeah. So where would you start with that? Have you got an idea, or I mean, I've got a story I can tell here if you want, but have you any thoughts on it?
I mean, there are a few things that I have really sort of taken to heart in the last few years that I strongly believe in. That there's just some very basic things that if I stick to, good things will happen. And I could sort of condense the 5 things into 3.
Okay.
And one is, so you know the SMART plan, you know, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound, and all that. Yep. Yeah. So you make your SMART, you figure out what you want, and you make your SMART plan, right?
Yeah.
But what's for me has been the biggest difference in your SMART plan or your strategy in getting from A to B is the last letter, the T, the time bound. Like I would say I'm a really, really big believer in keeping that as short as possible, at ideally like 1 and maximum 2 weeks at a time. It's like, don't plan out further than that in terms of your next step. Don't be thinking about what you have to do in 3 months or 6 months and 12 months. It's too far out there. Things change. It's too daunting. If you only plan for, like, it's kind of like crossing a river by hopping on the rocks. You kind of you hop and you look up, and you hop and you look up. You'll get to the other side if you do that. If you just try to just go for it, then you know something will happen. So by keeping those distinct steps into sort of 1 or maximum 2 week blocks, has made a huge difference. It also helps you to really adjust quickly when time comes. I mean, look at 2020, how things have changed. Like if you had your smart plan, it'd be completely out the window. But if you just make really short time frames, then you're good, because like you can get there, but there's going to have to be a different way. You're gonna have to you're gonna have to be more online, or in some way take a different route. So that's been really key for me, is being much more focused on the here and now, because that's where our actions lie.
Yeah, that's the actual reality, isn't it? That's the moment of reality. It's not worrying about the past or panicking about the future. And do you think it has changed in lockdown? Do you think that move towards shorter term, time-bound time frames it's got something to do with the COVID outbreak, or is it something you've always thought was helpful?
I think it's something that's becoming increasingly obvious to me.
Right.
So no, that hasn't changed, because no matter what, if anything, sort of COVID has slowed a lot of things down. But just saying, for example, like if I wanted to be in Africa in a year, and thinking about all the things that I need to do to get there and how much things could change, it's too daunting, it's too expensive, too much can happen, and too much is at risk. Yeah. But if I just say, okay, for the next 1 week, I'm going to research all of the organizations I would want to work with on East Africa, all of them. You can do that by Google, and in 2 weeks, reach out to all of them. That's very simple. And by then, at the end of 2 weeks, you're gonna have a really good idea of what the real opportunities are. And you could even do this. You could even say, in 2 weeks, I'm going to buy that ticket, and then you're going to figure it out in the next 11 months. Okay. But like those are real solid steps, getting you significantly closer to being there. Yes.
Okay. And anything else in that, in terms of the ideas that would help people?
I think the second thing is definitely, and I know like this is something that's sort of become cliche now, but it's all about bringing them value. But when you want to work with somebody, some organization, some anybody at all, it's always you do need something from them. You need access, money, opportunities, but try not to think about that, and 100% think about what they need and what value you could bring to them. So that's another thing. Now that's something that's easy to say and it's obvious, and I think a lot of people talk about nowadays. But what I've discovered over the last couple of years is well, that's cool, and I 100% believe in that. But how does that work? So what I do is I look at their annual, if they're public, look at their annual reports. First of all, what is their mission statement? What's their values? Look at their annual report. Have they met those goals? And if not, where's the gap? And do you have skills that can help to bridge that gap? You look at their social media. Is it lame? Are you good at taking pictures or writing copy, or writing for their blog or for their Instagram? Like, are you good at website design? Are you good at maybe managing people and logistics? And you can help with their volunteer projects and their volunteer program. Like, everybody has a skill they can bring to the table. Like everybody does. That's unique and better than most other people. And if you think about what they need and how you can actually fill that gap by stepping back and looking at all of those things, because it's all there on the internet. Those are very real ways that you can bring value.
Very good. It's quite often one of the things, I don't know if you've got an opinion on this. One of the things I think I've seen, Paul, is it used to be that the value that you provided had to be measurable. And I still think it should be. I mean, if you can, it should be measurable. But I think during the pandemic, I've seen a lot more people talking about things that aren't measurable. Like humanity, love, compassion, empathy. Is that something that you've thought about or a view on?
I think measurable is really important, but the downside of measurable is almost by nature and by definition, measurable means short term. You have to within a week or a moment, you have to have a number to attach to what you've done, and you cannot do that if you're building a relationship where something, you're building your own karma and your own reputation and all that. That takes a long time, and something that you can't measure, but is more important than the measurables, really. Yeah. So both are important, but I think the latter is not as valued right now. But I think it's becoming more obvious now because we're not together that that those things are really important. And yeah, definitely.
Okay. So we've got something about value. And what's the third thing you think people should be thinking about?
The third thing is the biggest thing and overrides everything. And if I said pick one, well, don't just pick one, do all those, because they're pretty simple. They're very basic, but super important.
Yeah.
It's the Nike logo. Just do it. Just go. Right. Like if you want to do something and you feel it in you that it's been, nibbling at you for months or years, you have to listen to yourself, and you have to go. You have to buy that ticket. You have to sign up to that course. You have to go, see that person that you need to talk to or apologize or reconnect with. Something, is inside of you is drawing you towards this. You mustn't ignore that. You must listen to your intuitive self, and you must just do it. Worst case scenario is that you go, you spend the money, and it doesn't work out as planned, but you have a big adventure and a great story at the end of it.
Yes.
But more likely, something else is going to happen where you're going to have even more opportunities. And you're also going to have no regret. So that takes, but just to go and do means you have to be intentional about ignoring all of the fears that get sort of piled on you. This is right now is such a fear-based culture, and so many of those fears are not even real, or are like number 57 in terms of what's actually, a concern, like terrorism and, borders and things like that. In terms of what's really, like the underlying causes of all these things. If you just sort of say, I'm going to be courageous in this moment and buy that ticket or take that step, that is so huge to your happiness, which is really what it's all about.
I love the word courageous. There's quite a lot of the literature at the moment talks about vulnerability and about, I think a lot of the literature is quite divisive as well, weirdly, at the moment, about group behavior and group identity, and it just creates more difference, as far as I can see, between different animals, peoples, races, whatever it is. And so I think courageous is something, and it's it's quite interesting you raise it, because one of the things that I've had, even in this group, people have said, how did you get into this? How did you decide to do it? I actually got advice from a mate of mine, and he just said, just effing do it, Scott. And if you look right back to the beginning, I was hopeless at this. I mean, it didn't look good. It was badly organized. I couldn't control the captions properly. The line was bad. You just have to do it. And one of the things I've seen, and it's quite comical, actually, a lot of people have retreated behind technology. They've gone out and they've spent a fortune on technology. And here me sitting with my Logitech camera and a simple microphone, together less than 200 quid, and you can do it. You don't need to spend hundreds and hundreds of quid.
I was looking for a picture I took of it. I've got this little box upstairs in my room, and it's a cardboard box. I've just kind of recycled it to reuse into something else, and it says JFDI. I've written inside. Just fucking do it, right?
Absolutely.
In the top, there's a place to put money, and if you want to buy that ticket or do something like that, that's my JFDI box. And then it's like, I'm not going to use cost as an excuse, because if I have to save over 12 months, just top, and that's my box. It's funny because exactly. You don't
get on with it.
So not technological, this box.
And I've got one, he's a good friend, actually. I've got one friend who has literally spent thousands of pounds, and he has got the most amazing kit, and he never does anything with it. It's like, what? You spent 12 months buying all this kit. So money isn't the answer always. It is that self, it is courage. I love the courageous word is a good one, actually. I do like that. It's a strong
courage to me is doing something. It's not about not being afraid. It's doing something in spite of being afraid. Like in the face of it, doing it anyway. That's courage. To me, there's a distinction between that and strength.
Yes.
Strength is then you take that turn, you step out of your comfort zone, and strength is you keep on going. And you need both of those.
Yes. So I'm going to tell a story about this, but I'll do it when I'm in summation, because I've got a lot of it. This is about what you're doing, not about what I'm thinking. So that's been great. I loved that, and it's a little like I've now officially called it Paul's Rules, right? So Paul's 3 rules there for
it
getting
works.
things
It
to
really,
the right direction.
they really do work.
Yes.
You know, do things for the here and now that are solid steps will get you one little step closer to that big goal. And the second was so that's that. And what was the sorry? The second one was thinking about what they want, not you.
Yeah.
Because what you give
value.
and what you receive in the long term. That goes back to, you know, measurables are important to them, but in that instance, not as important to you. That ties into another thing that's super important. That's about relationships, because within that, it's about relationships. Like, nobody hires anybody from the contents of their resume. Like, no one does it anymore. They hire who they want to work with. How do they know that? Well, they have to know you. So you have to get to know them, or someone vouches for you that you are fun and capable, and that's all you got to be, you know. And the third thing, definitely is just go and do it.
Just do it. Yeah, I think the relationship thing. I'm quite. I don't know how if this happens to you, but I'm quite often asked, how do you get all these people to come on your show? It's just relationships. I mean, last week the chap, the senior lecturer from London University, I hadn't met him 3 weeks ago. You know, but we called each other, we got connected, called each other, got to know each other quite well, quite quickly. Boom, he's on the show and he's coming back, you know. So I think you've got to be open to, and I'm not great at it, I have to be honest, Paul. See, I'm better on tech than I am on an individual basis. I get quite, I don't know, but you're like, I get quite nervous, believe it or not, in a, I know it's really weird considering what I do for a living, but I don't like getting into a big room full of people. I don't like it.
I'm definitely an introvert, 100%.
I don't know if I am. I think I might be. I'm not on the stage, but I am in a group, and I quite often hide at the bar, you know, behind a pint of Guinness. You know, that's my coping strategy for that.
But if you think about all the great things that happen to you in your personal and professional life, all of them, it's all from relationships.
Oh yeah,
almost nothing is from your resume. Almost nothing from your you know, your history of work. It's all about like how you were to work with. That's really what's been about, really.
Yeah. No, I think that's beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's been a really important little part, and it's forever going to be known as Paul's 3 laws now, or 3 rules. We'll have to think about that. And so there's a couple of other things we wanted to talk about, isn't there, in relation to what you're doing, because it's so interesting. Can we do the discussion about the zoos first that we talked about? What's happening in that respect? Tell us about.
So you see this book here, right? So usually, like, as a scientist, like, what you really want to do is get your name on papers. You know, you want to be the first, second, last author, getting your name out there in literature. But the pinnacle, I think, for me, is being this. The foreword is written by Jane Goodall.
Whoa, yes.
And I am the official ambassador for this book, and this is me. I'm the same book
as Jane Goodall.
Right? So that's it. I'm done.
Yeah, you can retire now. Just tell the audience who Jane Goodall is. They might not know, believe it or not. Some people might not know. Who's Jane Goodall?
Okay, Jane Goodall is a woman who was initially made famous in the 60s when she was one of the what's called Leakey women. So a man named Leakey had women who, and he intentionally brought them on board if they weren't sort of professionally trained by academia, to go and study large primates in the field. So you have gorillas and chimps, and there was one with orangutans, and Jane Goodall was the one with orangutan, and what she's really done is, even though she's in the field for a relatively short period of time, you know, a few years, since then she's dedicated her entire life to telling the story of these chimpanzees and the challenges they face because of us, and as a result, helping to save, you know, species and ecosystems, and to this day she's a huge inspiration for people all over the world, so and myself included.
What's the name of our project? The global project she has? It's going.
Well, there's Roots and Shoots. That's the schools. That's a young children's related one, and that's really what this book is about. So we're talking about science and storytelling in scientific papers. for me, I think this is the much more impactful than that. That helps to inform scientists and spread knowledge. Really, really important to build knowledge, and so we can make the world a better place. But when we talk to children about nature by books like this, that helps to build the next generation of scientists. And so you have to have both. And I think, and this is what I'm really passionate about. It's about this book, An Antechinus in the Attic. An Antechinus is an endangered species in Australia, and it goes from A to Z about all the species in Australia, and it's geared towards school children. Wow. But this is, to me, that's just as important as the scientific work as well that scientists publish.
That's marvelous. And what are you going to be doing with that then? What's happening with what's the project you're doing?
So the same group. I'm not sure if I can get into too specific details, but basically, what they want to do is they want to kind of create like a Eurovision for children around endangered species around the world. So like in Eurovision when you have like, hey, it's me from Belfast, and they go around the world with each country. So if you have like a presenter and a storyteller from the countries all around the world, and you tell stories from zoos around their endangered species projects, like going around the world, and one sort of linked broadcast streaming. That's what they're going to do in a very special day in the upcoming months. Oh, wow. So I was going to reach out to Twycross because I think they'd be a fantastic partner to host. Basically, just to if we could bring a presenter or storytellers to Twycross, and Twycross can talk about some of the endangered species from the UK that they work with, and that'll be the UK sort of story, and then we'll move on to the rest of Europe. So it's all lining up. So
I'll have a word about that offline then, because that sounds really interesting. Really interesting. Good. Well, is there any dates yet, or is that all confidential at the moment? Is that still to be?
I'm not sure. So I would say in what month is it? In a few months, I would say.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that sounds great, and I love the intention behind it. That makes a load of sense to me. Good. All power to you. And then there's a final project that we did mention last time, so you can give us a bit of an update. This is you're around the UK in a boat situation. What's that about?
Yeah,
again?
so we've named this project. We call it Changing Planet, Britain's Wildest. And so basically on Facebook and Instagram at the moment, and it's gonna be a web series, 6-part web series is what we're planning on now. Where basically we're getting in a boat. And we're sailing from the southern tip of England to the northernmost outcropping of the Scottish Isles, along the way exploring the wildest places of the British Isles and the most fantastical wild animals of the British Isles. And so you don't have to go halfway around the world to look at exotic locations and species. Like we have them right here in our backyard that I wasn't even aware about until I started to do the research. It's amazing, really, what's out there in the British Isles. It's a really, really wild place.
Yes.
So from working with seals and seal pups to basking sharks to wildcats to remote windswept islands in the middle, sort of almost at the edge of the world. It's going to be all there in this sort of sailing adventure. But along the way, we're working with some of the leading UK conservation organizations to tell the biggest, the most impactful story from that country. So from England to Wales to Ireland, it'll all be there, and we're working with some really exciting organizations.
Wow.
So that's what we're doing. We do need, right now we're at the stage where we have all the partners, all the characters, all storylines in place. But what we really, really need, if we want to bring this to broadcast level, so the co-director and the director, the co-producer and director, he shot for National Geographic, Discovery Channel, Animal Planet, actually for the number one Animal Planet. He shot for all them. But this is for all of us a passion project, because what we're doing in this journey is we're getting in this boat at the end of September. And at the very end, we're landing in Glasgow, November 1st, for the first day of COP26. That's the United Nations Climate Change Conference. So the whole idea is to say, right here in the backyard of where COP is happening, the world is changing right here. And we want to show that that's happening, and bring that message to COP. And once we land as well, have a presentation in Glasgow at the end of our journey. But what we need, if we want to bring that to broadcast level, so basically if we want to bring this series to be able to pitch is a no-brainer to your streaming services or broadcasters, is we need a basic level of funding if we want to go to that whole next level of being broadcast ready. So right now we're reaching out to renewable energy companies, conservation organizations. I think they're a bit strapped at the moment with COVID. But we're looking. It's actually not a lot of money for a decent sized organization, especially if they look at what it's going to bring them in terms of marketing and brand. It's actually quite small. So we're hoping to connect with a company that is really aligned with us in terms of our vision and values.
Okay, and if someone was watching that would like to talk to you a bit more about that, how would they get in touch with you?
Absolutely. You can on all social media handles. I'm at Vet Paul Ramos. Is my name here on Vet Paul Ramos?
I've got it here. Yeah, I can put it up in a minute.
So you can look at me at Vet Paul Ramos on Instagram, and then direct message me as an example. You can always reach out to Scott, and but you can on social media you can just direct message me at Vet Paul Ramos. Yes. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Paul Ramos. Okay. But so not only is this about a web series, but what's different about it? So we're not going to go somewhere, shoot amazing thing like, some like a one planet, like that's amazing stuff. But actually, every day we're going to be storytelling. Every day we're going to be live with social media, podcasts. We're going to be doing lives and uploads to show the behind the scenes stuff, the making of, all that stuff that goes into having an adventure like this. So basically you're going to kind of be there on the boat with us. It's going to be sort of a living, breathing thing for the entire 4 to 5 week trip. We're also saving a space on the boat for influencers along each leg of the journey. So so it's going to be heavily influencer and social media focused. And your influencer could be like a niche natural history influencer, all the way up to a lifestyle travel vlogger with a large following. So everything between there. But it's going to be heavy on social media.
That's a great idea. It's rare that the broadcast media get in the influencing population. There's not a connection often made there. So that's a first, actually. I think it's very rare.
I think they underestimate them and they don't value them as much as they're so important in terms of the part of even setting conversations. And the thing about influencers is they're just like everybody else, normal people. And so in that way you can just go along on the journey with them through their eyes. I'm really excited to get to know the different adventures. And we're all amateurs. That's the other thing. It's like we need to figure out how to sail, except for one person. We'll have some proper sailors, but we're pretty much amateurs. Like, this is a proper adventure. We're figuring out as we go along.
I love it. Well, I wish you well, and I can't wait to watch it happening live, because I think it's a terrific. There was an example just yesterday. Again, it's funny how these things all happen. I was watching. There's a Scottish TV show called Landward, and it's about the sort of the Highlands and the Islands and farming and all that. It's all connected. And one of the correspondents is based in Shetland, and he had just filmed a pod of orca, 6 of them, just tracing round the island. And he had a drone, and he was following them as they were tracing round the outskirts of Shetland Isles. I mean, it is absolutely incredible. I wouldn't want to be there in front of them, but my goodness, it was extraordinary. It's brilliant filming. These drones have added a whole new dimension to how we film things, haven't they? Very interesting.
And that's the thing. Like, I think a lot of people aren't aware that we actually have a lot of cetaceans, porpoises and dolphins and whales, and like they don't even know what's out there. I don't even know what's out there, and I'm excited to find out. But like the puffins and all sorts of like wild and fantastical creatures, that it's just right there in our backyard that we're not aware of.
I'm very jealous. I'll be there vicariously. I'll be doing it through you. I'd love to be there. Well, folks, that's our 45 minutes with Paul Up. I mean, that again, mate, it's just gone so quickly. But I think the fact that you've given us good stories, You've made us jealous with your turtle adventures and your trip around the UK, but you've also given us some laws. Let's remember the laws again. What were the 3 laws again that we spoke about?
The whole reason why all of this is happening in my life is because, like, if I were to think about, I want to make a web series for Netflix, and you know what I mean. That ain't gonna happen. But if I say I'm gonna do this and this and this and this, and then what if? Those 2 questions are really powerful. What if and why not? Why not? Why not me? What if? You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if I didn't sort of make short-term plans in terms of reaching out to Jackson Kingsley, the director, and then the other organizations like RZSS up in Edinburgh, or Nature Scott, none of this would happen. So it's one step at a time. And then I thought about, well, how could they benefit? Like, our values are so aligned, like we could really bring them a lot of value in terms of being a part of this project, being a real partner. And so that's just about like showing the world what important work they're up to, and actually what they're doing is part of the solution to create a better future for all of us. So that it benefits everybody to bring them on board. And the third thing is just do it. Like, I don't know how to sail. Right now I don't really know sea turtles. But I'm just going to go and do it, and I'm going to figure it out along the way. And that's probably the most important thing, I'd say.
Well, we wish you well. And after you've done all this, you need to come back on the show for the 3rd time and tell us about your adventures, Paul. So thank you very much indeed for being my guest again. We've already mentioned that if anyone wants to get in touch with you, use that hashtag on the screen, Vet Paul Ross. Paul Ramos. Paul Ramos. This is live. Thank you very much. Is there anything else you want to say before we leave? Because I'm just going to switch you off now, if that's all right.
No. Thanks, everybody. I hope you are having a wonderful week. And thanks for listening in.
Cheers. Thank you very much, Paul. We'll see you again. All the best, my friend. Safe travels. Bye-bye. Bye. Well, wasn't that fantastic? I think Paul's an incredibly interesting man, and I think his work is extremely important. One of my heroes in biology, I've mentioned him before, is called E.O. Wilson. And E.O. Wilson introduced the idea that we should be thinking about nature's services as that. You know, what do we get from the natural world that's providing, natural services to humanity? And I think Paul is right at the absolute nub of that. He's doing terrific work. So thank you very much, Paul. It was fantastic having you on the show. A couple of things I just want to finish with. One is I mentioned earlier that my next, the area I've been focusing on a little bit because of the lockdown and because of some of my other speaking work has been trauma. And this afternoon, I'm recording an interview with Harley Street therapist Olivia James, who specialises in trauma. So watch out for that. That'll come in. They'll probably launch that next week at some point, maybe even at the end of this week. But we'll have a think about that when we've recorded it. The second thing to mention is tonight. My guest last week, Ashok, who I think we all agreed was fantastic. He's broadcasting live tonight via Eventbrite. The address is on the screen there, and I'll put it in the chat later so you can click on it. And you'll be looking at meditation from the scientific perspective. I think Ashok has got a really interesting perspective on it, and I would strongly recommend that you listen to that tonight. It's at 7 o'clock tonight, and it's free. He broadcasts onto YouTube and other platforms. And as I say, I'll put the link into the chat in the Empathy Engine Facebook group and on my other platforms. I've done it already, actually. So if you go into my profiles, you'll see Ashok's thing. I highly recommend it. Can't believe it's free. Mega value there, guys. Absolutely mega value. And then finally, next week, I'm bringing back an old friend as well next week. I'm bringing back Peter Edge. Now, it's going to be an opportunity for me to get my fedora back on again, because what we're going to be talking about next week is what Peter calls lost knowledge. Now, this is something that I've come across myself a fair bit, mainly in the military, where we look at experiences. We go back and we review experiences that we had in life to try and inform the future. So it's linked a little bit to what Paul said earlier, actually. So Peter, he's not going to have his comedian hat on. He's going to have his more serious hat on this time. But we're going to have a good old chat. We had a talk earlier about if we were the Indiana Jones characters, would I be Sean Connery and he'd be Indiana Jones? Well, I'm not sure. We'll have a laugh about it. So I hope you have an opportunity to come and join us next week and take that step to start using stories more in your work. So to finish with, and as I always finish with, one of the things that I think is really, really important is that we all think about the stories that we have in life. Think about what Paul said earlier about his stories and how he's using them to influence people, to help him make his dreams come true, and to help change the world, to try to help us understand the natural world better. Be an archaeologist like Indiana Jones of your own life, because you know what? Those stories can absolutely change the world. Thank you very much for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks for your comments in the chat. Much appreciated. Twitch, you're with me. I've finally got a Twitch community, so thank you very much. One last thing, if you want to support the show, I've got various platforms and ways you can do that now. He says scrolling up so I can show you them. I am, of course, on Patreon, and 2 or 3 of you are already supporting me on that. This is a way you can just buy me a cup of coffee every month, buy me a couple of pints every month, just to help me in producing this video and these videos every week, because it takes time and it costs me money to buy licenses, etc. So I'd appreciate any support you can give us. All my work goes on to YouTube on www.youtube.com/Scott McArthur. I think it's growing now. I'm delighted to see that. And I'm getting a broader population, which I didn't expect. So that's really interesting as well. If you have any questions or thoughts from today, my email address is scott@sculptureconsulting.com. And then finally, have you noticed I've opened a shop? It's really funny, but we're actually selling some of this stuff. So I've started to produce bits and pieces that are linked to my work. We've got everything from phone cases to wacky T-shirts to you can even buy a case for your laptop in there. So thanks for those of you who have already supported me. There's a few of you who have done it already. It's absolutely magic. So thank you very much, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week. My name is Scott McArthur, and this was Artefact Live.